On today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast, big winners from free agency, big losers from free agency, and Ryan Suter.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up? What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On NHL podcast. We are your team every day. We thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked On NHL is brought to you by Indeed. Still searching for a great candidate for your company? Don't search, just match with Indeed. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. On today's episode of Locked On NHL, we take a look at some of the big winners in free agency from the Western Conference. We'll also talk about the teams that really didn't do a whole heck of a lot. Some players that are big winners from the free agent frenzy. And Ryan Suter bought out again. He's now a two-time buyout recipient.
He's going Ric Flair. Ric Flair, 17-time.
He's just he's just stacking up those credits. So we'll talk about all that here for today's show. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild, and one half of your dynamic Tuesday duo, joined by JD Young of Locked On Sharks. JD, it is, I think enough time has passed to allow the dust to settle to where we've got the full scope on the free agency experience. Yes. And what an experience it was. We've talked a lot over the last few weeks about how the Nashville Predators just stole the show. Steven Stamkos, Brady Shea, and Jonathan Marchessault, to name a few, that are headed to Nashville. But there were some other teams that had really solid free agency periods, solid signings. And so why don't we start? I'll let you go first. Just give me one of your either teams or players that won most here this offseason.
We both had, because we both made our separate lists, and we both picked this same. I was more specific. I said Connor Bedard is a big winner this free agency because do you know who Connor Bedard spent the majority of his time playing with last year? If you don't know, he spent 30% of it, nearly 30% of his time playing with Nick Foligno and Philip Karashev.
Wow.
Now, fast forward to this offseason, you're getting Taylor Hall back, which I think is, I know it's not a signing, but it's still a big piece, and he was brought in to kind of be the Robin to Connor Bedard's Batman. Chicago also signed Tyler Bertuzzi. They got Teravainen from Carolina. Like, there's actual real pieces that you can put around Bedard now, where he doesn't have to kind of go out and do things all by himself. We saw last year how many times would he do something cool, and then just his line mates around him just aren't able to kind of keep up with it, or he's just kind of out there having to chug along on a bad team. And I watched way too many Chicago games last year as I was rooting for the tank. But like you have like real pieces that are like actually make up a legitimate top six. You hope Peter Mrazek continues to play the way he played last year. And we talked about last week about Chicago maybe being a team that can make some noise. I think, again, looking at these signings, I think Chicago's done a really good job of putting in nice pieces around Bedard to kind of insulate him, and then still having your young guys who are kind of developing and maturing and be able to kind of replace those guys when they're ready to go. So I think Connor Bedard is one of the big winners of the offseason.
And as you mentioned, we both had Chicago, so I'll just use this opportunity to piggyback off of that. I don't know if you remember, but near the end of the season last year, Nick Foligno had some pretty pointed comments about Chicago, needing to figure out kind of how to win and how to do this with all the young players that they have. So what did Chicago go out and do this offseason? You bring in, as you mentioned, Tyler Bertuzzi. They get Pat Maroon to bring into that mix. They added some physicality and toughness that isn't going to get in the way of the skill players that they have. Like that's, I think, the important part is Pat Maroon is not going to. He's not going to steal somebody's job in the top six of that lineup. He's going to play a fourth line role, but he's going to bring an attitude. He's going to bring, I think, some of that is needed for Chicago.
Professionalism too. Like yes, I think that's a big thing too. Just like a professional guy who's been there, done that. A model kind of citizen for some of these young guys to learn from. Yes, that is very, very true.
And you get to the point now where I don't know how the line combinations will shake out, but Tyler Bertuzzi, Nick Foligno potentially playing together on a line, that's not fun. That's not fun to play against if you are an opponent. And so Chicago had some clear objectives this offseason of we need to bring in some guys that have won and know how to do it to teach this group the way. And, like you said, I think we can count him as an acquisition, Taylor Hall. If he comes back and is healthy, that's a huge boost to this team as well. And so, yeah, it was a free agency period and the draft too. Chicago, again, like they're getting really good at this draft thing over the last couple of seasons, which is just super annoying to me as somebody that covers the Minnesota Wild. Super annoying to see them really start to stack some things together. So, got to tip my cap to Chicago for what they have put together. And on the goalie side too, Peter Mrazek, he held his own in net, and as did Arvid Soderblom last season. Laurent Brossoit that's an intriguing addition because he was very good as Connor Hellebuck's backup last season. And so getting him in the fold, putting him in the mix too, that's going to help them out tremendously in that goalie position. So good work by Chicago. Again, I hate saying that, but
you got to go take a shower after this.
Yeah, you got to give credit where credit is due. So those are Chicago is definitely one of the winners. We have plenty of other teams to talk about as well, and some teams where it's like, hey, what are you guys doing? Like, do something. The meme of the poking the with the stick, poking the whatever you want it to be. People just putting their team's logo there and saying, come on, do something. So we'll talk about that as well as a couple of interesting player destinations and Ryan Suter. That's all coming up on today's episode of Locked On NHL. We are your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On NHL is brought to you by Indeed. We are driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. One of the parts, I'm in the job search right now. One of my favorite parts on the employee side for Indeed is that Indeed will tell you based on your qualifications, if you're missing something when you're looking for a particular job, they'll put it right out there. Missing qualifications, or you may need to elaborate more if you try to match up with this job. It just makes the search so much easier. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/locked on. Just go to Indeed.com/locked on right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Welcome back to today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast. Once again, we are your team every day, and we thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day. For your second listen today, make sure to check out both of our shows, Locked On Wild and Locked On Sharks, continuing to push the elite content even when it's in the off season. No rest for the wicked. We just continue to churn out the A+ content, and so make sure to tune in to both Locked On Wild and Locked On Sharks later here today. All right, let's go on to more winners and losers. JD, who's next on your list?
I went loser. And one team that I think might need to use Indeed to go find a left winger, and that would be the Vegas Golden Knights. They had a lot of talent leave the building this offseason, and that's kind of they're getting to that part of having to pay the bill on the credit card when you kind of have been an all-in team since your inception. You at points you have to pay and I wonder what this team is going to do, if they're going to continue with this all-in approach or if they're maybe take a step back this year. But this team doesn't have their first round picks for the next 2 seasons, so it feels like they have to continue to just be all in until they can't be all in anymore. But right now, their left wingers are Victor Olofsson, Pavel Dorofeyev, which I screwed up his name. Sorry, buddy. Brendan Brisson and Brett Howden. And like Brendan Brisson was, a first round pick a couple of years ago, but like hasn't been able to crack the lineup. I know that's a very good lineup, but that left wing group would have me worried if I was a Vegas Golden Knight fan who is expecting Vegas to make another deep playoff run, especially with aging Mark Stone, who we don't know if he's ever going to be able to hold up. You have Tomas Hertl. Like you have a lot of guys who are very much in a win now mode. But is this team still able to be in a win now mode?
I'm looking at their cap situation right now on puckpedia.com. RIP cap friendly. It's over. They are.
We're all losers for that, unfortunately. Yes.
Yeah, that was so. I forgot about it, and so I was trying to do some research for an episode, and it popped up, and it's like, nope, we're gone. So that was a sad day. But Vegas is currently negative $3.639 million in cap space, and so they're going to.
They'll have like Robin Lehner will go on LTIR, and because they don't have LTIR yet during the offseason here, so he'll go on LTIR, and they'll have like a tiny little bit of cap space here. But still, like they don't have much for assets. They have one of the worst prospect pools in the entire NHL, which is what happens when you continually trade your picks to try to get star players. Yep. And it's worked for them. But yeah, like at some point you run out of picks and you run out of assets. And what is this team going to do? Are they just going to kind of Mark Stone, Eichel, William Karlsson save us?
Yeah, that's your analogy of finally getting to the point where you have to pay the credit card bill is perfect. Like that's exactly where Vegas is at, and it's thankfully they won that cup because that lull is coming. Like at some point they are going to have to really, really take a peek at the future, and as much as they may want to kind of just push that down the road, they're going to have to at some point because, like you said,
I've seen it before. It's you 15 years of going for it, and then all of a sudden, it falls apart really quickly on you. So, Seth, big loser for you this offseason.
I'm going to do a couple of things here. I'm putting the St. Louis Blues on this list because I don't get the Ryan Suter signing. Like Suter was, let's tell the story here. Suter was bought out by Dallas. So now he's been bought out by 2 teams and went to St. Louis. But if you look at the Blues roster, like they've got Justin Falk, Torrey Krug, Colton Parayko, Nick Leddy, Scott Perunovich, Joseph Pierre-Olivier, Tyler Tucker. You've got Marco Scandella, who is an unrestricted free agent, but was also part of the team. Like Suter, he's not gonna vault really anybody with the exception of maybe the third pairing. So is he at this point, is he okay with being like the seventh defenseman? I mean, so the first buyout from Minnesota was for, locker room reasons, kind of behind the scenes stuff. Second one is very clearly, it came down to skill and like what he brings to the table. I don't know. It's just, it's kind of a weird fit. And I really don't get it from St. Louis's perspective. So that's a big L for me. But I like to also, this team was just marked present during free agency. There were a few of those. Winnipeg is one. Just didn't do a ton, and I know they didn't really have a ton to work with to be able to make moves. But coming off of last season, I don't know. Maybe you sign somebody to kind of help out with that. I know they traded for Dylan Coughlin. They're trying to unload Rutger McGroarty. But beyond that, like depth moves, Hayden Fleury, Mason Shaw, just, I don't know. Would have been nice to see a piece added to kind of help out what they're building. Is kind of all I'm saying.
It's not. I mean, they still have like $5 million in cap space, so you could have gone out and gotten like a solid piece there with your cap space. And I know, and then there's talk of them maybe trading Nikolai Ehlers. Like, what is this team? Because you just re-signed. You just last offseason, you just spent a bunch of money re-signing Connor Hellebuck, who's like definitely worth every single penny of that. But you Mark Scheifele, like you re-signed all these guys. And then you kind of just sit on your hands the next year. It's for a team that, I mean, they played well down the stretch, and they're going to just be we're going to just shut things down and try to squeak out goals. And guess what? We have the best goaltender in the world, and we think that's going to be a winning formula. But maybe they're just one of those. We'll go into the season, see how it goes, and then at the trade deadline, we can, if Rutger McGroarty, you could dangle him, maybe try to get a nice solid piece. Just go in there and see how Ehlers does this season. If you're bad, then you could trade him and get a nice haul at the trade deadline. Or if you're good, just ride with it and try to figure things out next offseason. But yeah, they're a weird team, and maybe it's just they're directionless, which is weird for a team that just committed so much money last offseason.
Yeah, and it is kind of, it's a little bit of an odd vibe too, considering you had Rick Bowness just retire over the offseason too, and so you got all these pieces. It's going to be very interesting to see kind of which way they take it, because it was very clearly a defense and goaltending oriented team last year that could score. The trend in the NHL is speed and scoring. Like that's what every team is trying to just stockpile.
Defense is for nerds. Just go score a bunch of goals.
That's all I'm saying. So it'll be interesting to see the route that the Jets end up going, because right now it feels like they're in kind of a holding pattern. Absolutely, pun intended. Had to do it. When we come back, today's show will finish with a guy who found a really good landing spot last year and is getting an opportunity to try to double down on that, and plenty more as we finish today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast after this. Final segment of today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast. Once again, we are your team every day. Make sure, if you have not checked it out yet, to hang out after the episode is over so that you can experience the 24/7 streaming magic of Locked On Sports Today. The first of its kind. I'll say it again. First of its kind. 24/7 streaming channel. giving you all of your favorite Locked On shows, all your favorite Locked On personalities. And the best part about it, JD?
None of the yelling!
Thank you. No screaming. Nobody trying to elevate over another person to get their point in.
Seth, I'm going to let you finish here. Whatnot.
None of that. None of that. So make sure to check it out. Again, Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or the Amazon Fire TV channels app. 24/7, all sports, no screaming. All right. Finishing our look at winners and losers here in free agency from the Western Conference. JD, who do you have next on your list?
I'm going to go winner here. In this one, it's a little weird, but Dustin Wolf, goaltender for Calgary, right? Who's been one of the best goaltenders in the AHL the past couple seasons and has gotten a taste of NHL time, but he needs a clear path to playing full-time NHL games. With Calgary trading Jacob Markstrom to the New Jersey Devils, that opens up the path to one Dustin Wolf. And it's going to be a long year in Calgary this year, right? As this team has finally admitted what they are. They're going to be rebuilding, and he is going to get plenty of chances to make plenty of saves or see plenty of shots. But the best way for goaltenders to get better is to play. And I think while it's going to be a long year, it's good for Calgary to kind of make the move. They've drafted a young goaltender in the 7th round, and he looks to be I think he's going to be a special goaltender, and just needs to get those reps in. So big win for Bay Area native Dustin Wolf.
I've got another. I'm going to say loser here because I don't know how this situation is going to play out. How about Yaroslav Askarov? Because the Nashville Predators locked UC Saros in to a nice new 8-year extension and also signed Scott Wedgwood.
Yep.
And so you have a really good goalie prospect, the Predators do. Feels like his path to the NHL is kind of blocked. And he is in the final year of his ELC. He's a restricted free agent next season. If you're Nashville, you would think you would kind of want to get a look at him, to see what you've got, to see what his next contract slots in at. But it doesn't feel like there's a ton of opportunity. Now, injuries are a thing. Injuries do happen, and so in that case, then there you go. But I mean, there was talk about Saros potentially being traded at various points. That obviously went away, and now he's locked in long term. So if you're Askarov, you're maybe in the back of your head thinking, let's see what else is out there. See if there's an opportunity somewhere else to maybe go be the guy. And there were rumors that the Los Angeles Kings might come knocking in that department. If I'm the Kings, I absolutely would, because the Kings have nothing. They got Darcy Kemper. That's it. Nothing. So I'll say Askarov is a loser right now, but there is potential that if he catches on in a new spot and gets a huge opportunity, that he could be moved into that winner column.
I think with Askarov, though, if you look at Nashville, who's very much now an all-in team, you go into this trade deadline, you have 2 first-round picks this year, and you have Askarov. So that's 3 really, really intriguing pieces where if you wanted to make a big splash at the trade deadline for a team that is very, very much all in right now, you have a lot of stuff that you could deal with there. So yes, Askarov's a loser right now, but I would be surprised if he is still with Nashville by the end of the season, because I think he gets traded at the trade deadline for a rental piece that can help Nashville try to hoist a cup this year. But yeah, you got to feel bad for him. Really nice dude, really fun dude. Getting to chat with him at the AHL All-Star game. Really fun dude, really out there. So, but yeah, really, really fun dude. So yeah, I definitely a loser right now. Another loser is we kind of stick in it's very central, I think, division in this as we're going, because the Pacific literally did nothing. Yeah, the Pacific was just like, hey guys, we're here. Colorado, and it's not really like their own fault, but it's very much in that like teams that did nothing because they couldn't do anything. They're just like kind of they're just handcuffed right now because of the uncertainty with like if Landeskog's going to come back. You know, you have like there's so much uncertainty with this roster that they really can't do anything right now. And when you see other teams get better, I think it's especially like a team like Nashville. It makes it tough for Colorado to kind of, you know, go into the season and just be like, okay, yeah, we're good. We got the pieces here. And yes, they have Makar and they have McKinnon, and that's going to drag them to a lot of wins. But when it gets deep in these playoff runs, and that depth is what gets tested and what kind of, you know, is helps you out. I don't know if Colorado right now has the horses.
Yeah, it very much is dependent on what happens with Landeskog and Nichushkin too. Like if those guys come back and are able to play, that just turns Colorado into a completely different team. But until they do, yeah, it is going to be fascinating to see how that bottom six especially plays out. Like that top six is still pretty darn good, but
it's just so much wear and tear. Like just you know, like those guys have to play well every night and kind of drag this team. And you wonder if by the time it gets to the playoffs, if there's just going to be like, you know, like Makar having to play 25 minutes a night. And Makar's young and Makar's a wizard and he can play 25 minutes a night. But like, again, by the time you get to the playoffs, then you got to start going for 25 to 30 minutes a night in a playoff atmosphere. If that wear and tear just doesn't kind of start to take its toll on you, especially if you just don't have the help around.
I'm going to finish with a winner. And this is a combo platter. I'm gonna credit Dallas as a winner because Matt Duchene was bought out by the Predators before last season. Dallas Stars picked him up on a flyer, $3 million flyer. Let's try it. Let's try it out. Let's see what happens. He had a 65-point season, 25 goals, 40 assists. He signed for, and I was shocked, $3 million. That's quite a bargain for Dallas, and it seems like a really good match. I mean, Duchene is like a middle six guy for them because of all the players that they have in that lineup, and so he just gets an opportunity to just go out there and do his thing, and
enjoy country music. Continue to enjoy his country music in Dallas, and that's all he wants.
But then, you know, another move that they made that I think is really nice under the radar move was Casey DeSmith, like signing there to be the backup. Scott Wedgwood had that honor. I think midway through the season before this last one, and then all of last season too. Jake Ottinger has he's been relatively healthy in his young career, but he has missed some games. Casey DeSmith at $1 million a year for 3 years. That's a heck of a backup goalie. So I'm going to give Dallas a win for the offseason because they didn't have to do a ton. They have a good mix on that team, and you know, they just needed to add a few pieces. They also added Ilya Lyabushkin to the mix too, one of my favorite last names in hockey. And so, you know, you've got a Dallas team that is very deep. They deepened. They're going to be poised for a good year this year, to say the least. And fans are going to actually be able to watch.
That's a sore spot for you, I know. Yes, I'm going to sneak in one more here.
Sure.
My San Jose Sharks. You got the first overall pick, Mac Brady signed. You're getting Will Smith, who was the 4th overall pick last year. You signed Tyler Toffoli, who's a walking 25 to 30 goal scoring machine every year. And William Eklund, in my career, I've been trying to find William Eklund friends. We have found William Eklund friends. He doesn't have to play with Luke Cunningham anymore. He's going to actually have real centers to play with, whether it's Granlund, who he played with really well last year, Celebrini, Alex Wenberg, who they signed as well. This team, they're going to lose a bunch of games, but they're going to be at least way more entertaining this year as they lose a bunch of games. And they keep saying the future's teal, guys. It's coming. So my San Jose Sharks, you tanked hard, and you were rewarded for it. So tanking's awesome. Your team should do it more.
Yeah, they should. Minnesota Wilds. I'll get in some thoughts on the Minnesota Wild too to finish. They didn't have a ton of money to spend. It seemed like for a while that it was looking like they were going to try to go get a top 6 guy, somebody that could step into that second line and really help out with scoring. And they go get Yakov Trenin instead to throw into just a large mix of bottom 6 guys. And so this episode is not released yet, but it had a crossover with Locked On Avalanche. And because I did, I had to do a sound check, as one does. When you hop on another show, you participate in the show's bits. The song that I chose was Stuck in the Middle with You, because they're
creamy middle team.
Yeah. So
creamy middle team.
It was a quiet free agency. Again, I don't, it's not that I expected them to do more, because they were only going to be really able to sign one guy probably.
Yep.
But, and it's, the other part too is like, it was a need. Like he's a great penalty killer, and he is just a killer out there on the ice. That was needed.
Yeah.
It's just like you've got 5 or 6 of those same types of guys on the roster. And so I'll put the Minnesota Wild in the L column myself for another quiet free agency. I can't wait until next season, because at least there's going to be flexibility to do some stuff. Whether they will or not remains to be seen. But that is our show today. Thank you for tuning in and making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day. Make sure to hit the like button on your way out, and make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. You can also catch Locked On NHL all week long with our wide array of hosts covering all topics in the NHL in many different ways. So make sure to tune in all week long, and make sure to tune in all off-season long, because we will keep you up to date on all things throughout the NHL on our shows every day of the week. You can find new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.